We are familiar with it already. There is the documentation of the national monument of Nigeria, which goes by the name Egbo Bassey House. One of the most unique prefabricated historical period. So yes, what I'll be showing us are two things. But before I do that, let me walk you through very, very quickly. I don't know if I mentioned my name already. My name is Dr. Bassey. I'm a director in Vernacular Heritage Initiative, which is the organization that is partnering with the National Commission for the Documentation of this particular building. And I'm also a lecturer at Gerda University. So I start very quickly now with presenting the portfolio, as I like to put it, that is more or less also, I also like to call it the Bible of the Egbo Bassey House, because it contains virtually everything that you need to know about this particular building. What it is now, what it was, and some of the architectural details of the doors, the windows, the roofs, and so forth and so on. Which means, if by some unknown reason, God forbid, that building disappears tomorrow, we have a document to refer to. We can literally bring back this building, because everything that's inside this particular portfolio contains all the details. So here is just more or less a table of content, because of our time, which is also referred to. The particular street is called the Egbo Street, where it's located, and this is the building itself in its current state today. So what I did here was just to have an overview of what the building looks like over time, from 2004, excuse me. What it also looks like on the map, 2015, 2020, and of course finally in 2024. And what we have in 2024, of course, is captured.
Is this Google Maps or drone shot?
No, these are Google Maps. The historical ones from 2004 to 2020. They are historical maps, so we got that from yes, exactly. But the last one, the final one, of course, is Google. So this gives us an idea of how the area in itself, the urban fabric, has gradually changed also over time. And of course, from that point of view, we can also attempt to analyze some of the impacts of these changes on the conservation of this particular building, and that is why this is particularly important. So, to the historical aspect of it, the newspaper in 1959 called it the oldest house in Calabar. Of course, this is not true. It is not the oldest house, of course. It is the second oldest prefabricated building in that region, not exactly the oldest. But why is this newspaper important? This newspaper is important because it's the only picture that gave us a reference of what this building looked like in 1959. We couldn't lay our hand on any drawing, on any pictures or whatever, but this specific image right here gave us an idea. Oh, okay, so it had this door, it had this window located here, and so forth and so on. Because the specific building in context has undergone enormous modification over time. Right. So this is the only picture from the 50s that we could actually find. And this is why this newspaper publication is actually important. And the editor of this particular newspaper back then actually interviewed the son of the owner of that house, who was living in that particular building at the time, and gave the histories and so forth and so on. But like I said, the caption is actually quite misleading, because it is not the oldest house by any stretch of imagination. So, of course, it became significant from the point of view of our heritage in Nigeria since 1959, when it became acquired by the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, which was, of course, the Department of Antiquity at the time. Right, so it was handed over officially, however, in 1986, when the building became exactly 100 years old. So the house was built in 1886. In 1986, when it became exactly 100 years old, then it was handed over by the son of the owner of the house, which is Chief Egbo Bassey. It was handed over finally to the commission, although it was acquired by the commission in 1959, August 14. So this house is particularly unique. Speaking about the significance, it's particularly unique because it's one of the many houses of the middlemen elites during the transatlantic slave trade, and also during this the rise of palm oil exportation. So the old Calabar was a very, very important port, one for slave trade, two, during the transition, now at the end of the slave trade, during the transition into, of course, exportation of crude oil, among other things like salt and so forth and so on. Right. So during this period, these Calabar elites, they refused the white people to have direct contact to the Efik population. So they acted as middlemen. So whatever the white people needed, they were the middlemen that could help them get it from the hinterland, then bring it to the white people. Now, because they had enough contact with the white Europeans at the time, they started imbibing some of the cultures of white Europeans, like sending their children to Liverpool to school, like also requesting that we like the kind of houses that we see you guys live in or that we watch or maybe on TV or whatever, that why don't we just come to Nigeria and build something like this? So it was the rise of the era of prefabricated building into Nigeria, especially, more importantly, in that region of the country, right? So the first, however, prefabricated building was in 1883, which was the old consulate here in Calabar, then followed by the old residency in 1884, then followed by this particular house, which was built in 1886. So Chief Egbo Bassey was a rich, wealthy middleman during this period, and he contacted the white guys, the white people, excuse me, and they brought this house from Glasgow in Scotland. Especially, we found the evidence of McFarlane, which is the prominent industry at the time in Glasgow that was responsible for this kind of sort of fabrications and sending them everywhere around the world. It wasn't only limited to Calabar at the time. Right, so due to its rarity, the discussion for acquiring it started in the late 40s. Then finally, in 1959, the National Commission acquired it and it became protected according, of course, to the NCMM Act. Okay, so fast forward to where we are today. Unfortunately, since the death of the son of Chief Egbo Bassey, whose name is Chief Edith Bassey, who died in 1974, the house started decaying. However, there was a significant period of almost 20 years in between 1974, not exactly 20 years, I think my memory is not exactly correct at the moment, between 1974 and 1994, right? I think it's actually 20. Yes. Between 1974 and 1994, the house was actually abandoned. And the reason for the abandonment is simply because the family were arguing on who owns this building, who doesn't own this building, and so forth, and so on. And for this reason, the commission decided to stay out of the entire argument. So the house was abandoned, and it was during this period that this house actually decayed very, very significantly. It became rehabilitated in 1994 when it became a primary school, finally, and by 2001, when the final occupant of the building moved out, the building was already on the verge of collapse. Right? Finally, in year 2024, we had a discussion, of course, with Madam Raina, the director, about what we can do to document this specific building. And then we approached the funder, which is Gerda, who provided us with the funding for the documentation and emergency stabilization, emphasis on emergency stabilization. Right, so when I sent the pictures to the funder, they were very worried about the safety of the team that's going to work in this building. So they also gave us little money to stabilize the building to at least ensure it doesn't fall during the entire timeline of the project. So the project had two objectives. One was, the main objective, however, is actually documentation, but alongside it was emergency stabilization, which we also did. So this was when the project team was actually on site in March last year, where we took physical measurements of the building. We consulted with the local authorities there, the National Museum, the Egbo Royal House, the grandchildren, and of course the descendants of Egbo Bassey, and some of the pictorial representations. And now, finally, this is the architectural drawing of the current state of the building, right? Even from the picture, you can already see the state of dilapidation. It's unfortunate that maybe because of the reflection here, it's not exactly very clear. But nonetheless, I think we have an impression of how dilapidated it is at the moment. So we took physical measurements through the streets and so forth. Then we were able to come with the ground floor plan. For example, this is what it looks like. This is the first floor plan. Then this is the architectural drawing of the current state of the building. This is the approach elevation that is the front of the house. This is one of the sides, which is very unfortunate. As an architect, if you look at this building, you might assume this is a section, but it's not a section, it's actually an elevation. But simply because the facade is completely gone, right? This is the right side of the building, this is the left side of the building also. So we also did a SketchUp parametric model of it. So this is what it looks like after we did a parametric model of it. This is also the model. Then finally, we decided to query how it was built. So what we saw today is actually not the exact picture of it. Like every other domestic house, everywhere around the house, to suit our cultural, let me say, the way we socially and culturally organize ourselves, right? So what was built from Glasgow was not in tandem with some certain domestic reality of how we live in Nigeria. So when the building came to Nigeria, the occupants, over the different historical period, modified the building to suit the purpose. Also, given the fact that the house has also undergone diverse functions. At a point, it was a carpenter's house. At a point, it was a club. At a point, it was a church. At a point, it was a house of a Syrian or a Lebanese, right? So, for everybody that occupied this building, they modified it according to their own function. So, when we're talking about authenticity in heritage right now, we have to be very careful because what we see today is not what was brought from the UK. Right, so we did our own query, and finally we decided, okay, how was it built? Then we finally realized this was exactly what came from McFarlane, which is completely different from what it is today. But nonetheless, this is how it has been modified. So they have decided, for example, if you have a look at this building, so you just climb up, then you are under the rain before you enter into the house. This is completely different from the way we live around here, right? We often have shades over our heads before you can see those roofs at the side, which was just simply to cover the lobby and also protect the building, of course, from weather conditions, right? So these modifications is everything that has been put on this building. So when we had the second stakeholder meeting, we threw this question open, that which one do they prefer? Here, what came historically, or what it has been modified to be. However, this was what was acquired by the Commission in 1959. So the wow factor, the rarity factor, the let me say rarity, age, uniqueness, and so forth, which was one of the most important parameters for acquiring and heritage, of course, is demonstrated, at least in the mind of the Commission, by this particular building, right? But beyond that, this is also what the floor plan actually looks like. This is the ground floor. Here we have a very big open courtyard, which was used for diverse reasons. Clubhouse, not a courtyard, excuse me, a very big open space on the ground floor, which was used for clubhouse, for church, for second-hand clothes shop, for and so forth and so on, right? Flanking it is just another open room, basically. Then on the first floor, this is where we have the room where Chief Egbo Bassey himself was living, and then we have 4 rooms flanking the central sitting room, right? 2 rooms on the left, 2 rooms on the right. Very, very symmetrical and very, very typical of course, the design of that historical period. We are talking about in the European architectural history. We are talking about the Baroque period, where we have symmetry, proportion, and balance as the vehicle through which people assume they can view the realities of the universe. And this is also always obvious in the architectural design. So as at that particular period in the history of European architecture, it was the Baroque movement. So balance and symmetry was always very, very important. And it's also very obvious in this particular building. What's on the left is what's on the right. Balance and proportion. Right. Then you have the modularity. So you have the iron columns to support the modular structural elements of the building, which was something which was prevalent in European architectural history at that particular period. So was the first floor modified? We couldn't answer this question because the first floor is almost completely gone. We have no clue if they have modified something or not. But what is there right now gives us an assumption that the first floor was actually not modified. But the ground floor underwent significant modification. So this is what came, this is what the side view looks like, what came from what was brought down to the interior. And this is what the side view looked like. We couldn't see this side view, actually, I must tell you. This person has disappeared, it's completely broken. Right? So we used some of these pictures like this that we could find to see where doors were located, where windows were located. Then we also use our knowledge of Baroque architecture. So whatever is on the left is usually on the right. So since we have a clue of what's on the left, that face is not completely existing, but it's still there. Then we use that to assume that is what should also be on the right. Because this was, let me say, the underlying philosophy for architectural design at that particular period in time. And this was portrayed by some of the historical pictures over here. So finally, this is, like I said, this is what came finally from Scotland. Also, this is the view that came from Scotland, which is the view. The stakeholders, during our second stakeholders meeting, hopefully with the permission of the DG also, this is the view we hope to restore it back to. Not what they modified it to become. Because when we're talking about now authenticity and heritage, this is what is authentic. Right? What we saw in 1959 is an imposed authenticity. Right? So this is what we hope to restore it back to. So finally, adaptive reuse proposal, which was again one of the outcomes of the project, was to propose what are we going to use this building for? Because this is one of the fundamental questions, that was posed by the funder. That okay, even if we commit to funding this project, what is it going to be used for? If it was so valuable for Nigeria, why did we allow it to decay? Right? Then also the DG, then Professor Tijani wrote a letter to that effect that is going to be used as the library and the community museum. So this was a proposal that we forwarded back to the founder. So this is our proposal now of how this building is going to be changed now to the library and museum. So the ground floor is going to be a museum, right? There we have facility for museum, we have shelves, we have sitting area, and so forth and so on. We are not altering anything on that ground floor. We are just changing or putting, let me say, furniture over there just to change the function. This is the ground floor, excuse me, that's just acquisition. So this is the ground floor, which is going to be used at the museum, and of course this is the first floor, which is going to be the library. Right? So the ground floor, because of the noise around, we decided it's not going to be the perfect fit as a library. Rather, the first floor, which is a bit quiet, is going to be used as the community library. And we also portray this by some evidences in some of the letters from the commission. Historically, there was a time the commission wrote a proposal that is actually converted to Museum of Museums. And what does it mean? The then DG suggested that or commissioned an architectural firm in Lagos in the 80s to make models of 5 national monuments. This kind of paper model, right? And these paper models are going to be transported into this house, and this house will be the Museum of Museums. So if you want to see some of our national monuments, you don't literally have to travel over Nigeria. If you get into this house, you get to see the models of different museums that we have in Nigeria. Right, so we are buttressing the unanimous decision of the stakeholders together with historical evidences from the commission, who had already had a view of adaptively reusing this building as, of course, not a library, a museum. But our second proposal here is that the ground floor be used as a library for university students to get to learn about this important phase in our architectural history. Either we like it or not, the colonial architectural history, even while it seems like one of the darkest chapters of our national history, it is still a chapter that we really cannot erase. And this is one of the many evidences of that particular, let me say, dark moment in our historical evolution. So here, this is what the video is going to look like when we are adaptively reusing it as a library and a museum. This is the back side, this is the left side, this is the right side. And of course, if you kind of explode the building, this is what it looks like. On the ground, in the middle, then what the roof component and everything looks like. This is what the section is going to look like. That is the interior space of it. That is an X-axis section, this is a Y-axis section. Then this is what the 3D view of the building is going to look like. It's very unfortunate that this is not exactly very clear. So finally, to our restoration action plan, the first step to achieving our adaptive reuse proposal first is to ensure we restore this building. I mean, this is the most important and most significant first step. Right, so we went back to the founder and we advanced our interest in going to the next phase, which is the architectural restoration of this building. Unfortunately, we are not within the deadline at the moment to submit an application. So then we also discussed with them that, okay, we are not sure that if we have to leave this building till when the deadline is open, we are not sure this building is going to continue to exist. So they decided to support us now at the moment, as what we have it, to quickly undertake stabilization and seal-up of Egbo Bassey House. The reason for the stabilization is obvious. I do not have to motivate that in this building, in this room. But for the seal-up, the reason why I decided to seal up this building is that every single element that falls in this building when there's a storm is being carted away from sight by the local community. So the doors, which will give us evidences of how it was in the past, all these doors are missing, the windows are gone. The roof element, even one of the steel columns, has actually disappeared from this particular site. And the reason is very simple. This building is just accessible, right? Everybody goes there, pick up whatever they want. Nobody is living there anymore. Nobody says, no, you cannot do this, you cannot take this away. So this is the motivation for the seal-up. And what do we mean by this seal-up? We're just simply going to have this large, breathable tarpaulin all around it. Emphasis also on breathable, because if we just simply cover it up, it's a wooden building. If the heat gets retained within the particular building, we can in fact accelerate the decay. Where we're trying to save the building, we could make a mistake of even accelerating the decay. So we're going to be using a membrane that allows for inward and outward movement of air nonetheless, even while we are physically, let me say, enclosing or encasing this particular building. So by the grace of God, we'll be proceeding to site tomorrow now to start this stabilization effort together with the seller of this particular building. So here are the details of the building, the door. So what the main door looks like. So the owner ensured that he wrote his name on the main door, the Egbo Bassey house, and the year that it was built, right? This is one of the biggest, as we say on the streets, the selling point of this particular building. It's one of the most important elements of this building. That's been stolen away from the site. It was there while we were there last year, March. It was there when we were there in August. Well, as at February this year, when a member of the commission went there to do a video, this door is completely gone and it's completely stolen away from site. And this is where architectural documentation is very, very important. Thank God we captured this door and we have all the dimensions of it. We have the sizes of the wood and so forth and so on. So simply what we will do when we get to architectural restoration is just to consult our drawing there, we can replicate these doors. And this is where architectural documentation is one of the most significant entry points into any conservation process. It wasn't also limited only to that door. We also documented every single element and every single door in this house. Titled them door 1, door 2, door 3, door 4. So even while most of these doors are gone, we have the capacity right now, at least in theory, academically, to be able to reproduce these doors. These are the internal doors on the first floor. Very, very beautiful doors with stained glasses. This Victorian style stained glasses. And this is what the elements look like. If you disjoint each component, this is how you can assemble it. So we can even give it this to any random artisan that has at least basic knowledge of construction. You can actually reconstruct this building, right? This is what it looks like. What the door, each single element on that window, what it looks like, what are the sizes, the dimensions, and so forth. This is what the floor looks like, right? This is what the section also looks like, because on the ground floor, rather than having wood, they actually used zinc metal actually on the ground floor. Then on the first floor, it's actually wood. And this is what, if we expand the building, this is what each component of it actually looks like at the particular. So this brings me almost now to the end of what I used to call, what I like to say, I used to call it the Bible of the Egbo Bassey house, where we have each component. So what I'll be showing us as the next step now is just the 3D photogrammetric scan feel of what the building looks like today. Everything I explained so far appears very, very abstract, which I understand, right? But here, with this photogrammetric scan, we get to see 4 minutes for it to play. But of course, this just gives us a random idea of what the building is today. So what we did here was to use control points, GCPs. So we printed some barcodes that were sticked on each component of the wall. Then our team of experts were able to now stitch the pictures together to produce this particular photogrammetric video of the building. Mr. DGs, as you can see, the current state of this building.
This is very, very massive. Very massive.
See. So what we also did here is to use a software that allows us to see what the building looks like. Now this is 6 o'clock in the evening. This is what it looks like. You can also see what it looks like during the day, what it can look like during the night. So the software that we used permitted us to do this. So this is the exact situation that we have today. But what we are going to be going to Calabar to do as the next step now is to quickly stabilize this building. Because in its current state, it's going to take only 2 or 3 rings and this building is going to be on the floor. But we are lucky that the funder agreed to our proposal and they provided us now with money for material costs to quickly stabilize this building. Emphasis on very, very good before the rain becomes very, very important. So this was the first stabilization that we did. As you can see, those woods at the back was the first stabilization. Then there was a perimeter fence that was also put on this building, also by the NCMM members there. So this stabilization, in fact, I think I like to pause it here. All of these woods at the back was the stabilization that we did, and that saved that building, even till today. Because the upper balcony was already tilting, and it was going to fall any split second before we started that stabilization. And if that upper balcony, if the upper balcony had fallen, it was going to take everything together with it. Because the force in the building had been deflected only in one direction. So if that balcony had gone down, the upper floor will have gone together with it. And we're not even sure if the ground floor will also not go together with it. Right, so this stabilization effort.
So one question.
Yes.
So forbid, what happens if
because if the rain will fall this night, there's no guarantee that the building will not come down. There is no guarantee, I can assure you, sir. Right? What we did, right, we stabilized. In fact, our stabilization effort is what is keeping this building. This building would have probably disappeared by now. Because they went in there, they stabilized, they tried to close the windows and the doors. Then this perimeter wall, these wooden walls all around it was actually done also by the commission. It was part of our stabilization efforts during this particular period. Right? So some of the windows, doors, woods, iron, they have been carted away from site on a daily basis.
for scrap?
Yes. In fact, if you go to that place, DJ sir, if you go to that particular street and you stand on that street, if you look at those houses, they all have one element or the other from this building. Either their door or their window or their wall, or they all have one element or the other from this particular building. So for every time there's a storm, in fact, the caretaker told us that whenever there's a storm, the entire street, they gather on that place, waiting, because they know something is going to fly out. And once something flies out, then there's also everybody wants to also whatever is flying out and takes it to their house, then they sell. Right. Exactly. So this is the picture of the building today. You can see it's all gone. It's all gone. Right. But we're lucky, like I said, we will, by the grace of God, stabilize it to the best of our efforts, at least to keep it in place till we find funding for the architectural conservation. And all thanks to our funder, the Henkel Chieftain, who has made this funding available for us to quickly stabilize this building and then sell it out. Before, and at the timeline for this project, it's actually 2 months. And I'm really hoping we're even able to, if it's possible, if I had some magic wand, I would want to finish the stabilization in 1 week, really. You know, but I know the reality on ground is always very different. But if that is possible, I would like to get that done. But as fast as possible, we're going to build the site and we're going to start stabilization efforts. Beyond that, we're going to immediately seal up this building, like I mentioned. We're going to be putting breathable trampolines directly all around it, so that even if any elements fall off that site, you would have to literally tear up the trampoline to enter there. And then at that point, you know you are committing things. Right? So what we are going to do is to put the physical barricade all around it. So even when the windows, the doors fall down, at least we will meet them there. Then we can take out these sample woods to be able to look for the wood when we are ready for architectural restoration. Right? So this is the outlook today. It's very unfortunate. While the community likes to point a lot of accusing fingers to the commission that, oh, it's the commission that did not give us enough support, or the commission did not come to our rescue, and it's from our own historical analysis. In 1984, the commission committed 6,000 naira of that time's money to the restoration of this building, right? But the commission decided to step out when there was a lot of conflict between the families, court cases, taking each other to Supreme Court and so forth and so on. So several letters from the then DG, mandating that the then curator step away from this building until the family resolves all of their court issues. And during this period was when we lost this building. But if you go to that street tomorrow, they will tell you, oh, the commission acquired that, you don't take care of it, and so forth and so on. But I like Madam, the way Madam responded to them the last time, that she really set the historical facts straight to them. There's not really the fault of the commission, but your own fault too, as a family. So to conclude this, we also made a model by the commission in the 1950s. Right? So certain details are still missing here and there, but nonetheless it gives us an impression. So all of this was what I was mentioning, that was they were added. Yes, we are not going to have all of that, but nonetheless, we are going to kind of put, if you look at the drawing I made, we are going to put some kind of barricades here to ensure that people don't just fall off, don't just go out of the building and fall off, right? So we are going to insert back to what came. And this took, of course, a lot of historical, this was what was acquired by the commission, with this little modifications, this net right there. So probably the net were, some doors that are there are not authentic doors. On the left, on the back, they opened up several doors by themselves, which all of those doors we are going to close them up and return the building to exactly the way it was. Especially to suit the purpose of the new adaptive reuse. All of these are just hypothetical landscaping. If the commission will allow us, it looks like a nice landscaping. But unfortunately, due to the changes in the urban fabric of the houses here already, there's a house here already, there's a house here already, there's a house here already.
Yes. they have encroached.
Do those apps? Maybe, maybe not. Right? Because if we are going to retain this kind of landscaping, then a lot of things we have to give it. Of course.
I think we should pick our battles.
Yes.
Right?
we cannot
Yeah.
afford
Exactly.
to go to court with this, the pipes and other things. So it has been kept in the museum in Calabar. So we said that when this building is completed, we now
Take it back.
we take it back
Where did
there.
they find the objects? On the ground?
Where I'm also a bit distressed, Mr. DJ, I must tell you, is that Chief Egbo Bassey, the owner of this house, was also painted somewhere here on the ground floor.
Yes.
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 Buried.
It's buried.
It's buried, yes.
Wow.
Maybe they buried him with those items.
No.
No.
A walk-in tomb installation.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Here lies the remains of. You can do it in such a way that it's part of the museum.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe not the
Society. Egbo Society is a secret society in the Efik culture. So he was a prominent member of the secret society. So the house of that secret society is located somewhere up here. In Ekwe House. Right? So they showed us some. Yeah, we can also display them now in this museum. But this is going to require the activity as an NGO. They will never
they won't.
release it to us, but if the commission approaches them, I'm very, very sure.
I think all that. And then we can now look at the collection.
We ask them whether if they have spoons or cups or plates or other things. No, some of them they will be able
How
to
do
give.
you know if you now start doing that? They'll not start saying that. You know, some will say that you should pay them
Yes.
to return it.
Yeah.
And then you created a market for fake things. They'll say, actually, this spoon came from there. How do you know? So I think you should just leave them out.
So, Mr. DJ, sir, this is also, like I mentioned, this is the complete compendium of everything that I showed.
This is what you just presented.
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So, this is the final printout
Okay,
version of
let's
it.
do a
Which I'm going to
presentation.
be handing over now to the.
And I guess we'll do pop-up pictures, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I got this one.
Absolutely, sir. I did learn from you now.
You want to watch it? Okay. So, why don't we stand here because of the lights?
Okay.
Okay.
No, here, the lights is here.
Okay,
So you
yes.
take the picture from there.
Yes.
Okay. It would be nice if you take one carrying the bottle.
Yes. I will. So that I will also hand over the report.
So wait, now why are we looking? 'Cause
So just look
you're the main one here.
I'm better funny.
I need one on my
Yes,
phone,
sir.
please. Can somebody else help me? Is that okay then? So I can
So,
pick up
sorry,
the
you're
model.
distracted. Just look at me. Alright, smile. Thank you. Hello, sir.
No, this way. What's the front?
And these
Yeah,
are
yes.
Doctor, sorry, can you collect it then hand it to him? Let's just
I need a video or picture.
it to him.
And then look.
Yes, please. That's fine, sir. It's perfect.
Okay. Right.
Yes, please. Yes. Oh. Let's let me on.
Yeah.
The fan?
We are waiting for you. Wait. We are good to go.
Yes.
All right.
The fan is not disturbing.
It's on if possible.
We are lucky.
Is it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I think that this partnership is also important because it symbolizes a willingness for the government to work with the private sector to achieve a common objective. And I think one of the things I told the doctor was, as long as we're heading in the same direction, he will get all the support from the commission.
Maybe down in general, as a council general, what is the state of our museum? How is it like an effort to revive them?
The museums.
Yes.
Yes, so the museums definitely, we are in the process of revamping the museum ecosystem. We have 53 museums across the country. But it's important that we look at it not from a perspective of quantity but quality, right? I think we would rather have fewer museums of a better standard than just a large amount of museums that we will struggle to maintain. So we just recently appointed regional heads for the different museums across the country. What this means is that we're now going to start focusing on the regions. And perhaps at the end of the journey, our aim is to have at least one solid museum in each of the geopolitical zones.
Okay, sir. What are the plans by the commission to make this zone to make money from them? That is, to make them a source of government revenue. Are there plans and how do you intend to go about this?
So I think when you talk about revenue, we first have to improve the value proposition. I think people are more willing to pay for something when they perceive that they're gaining value from it. So if you walk into a museum and there's no lights, it's dusty, the storytelling is not there, you're not going to generate much revenue because people won't come. So for me, I think for phase one is to first get the infrastructure to a point where we deliver on the value to the average Nigerian. And then phase two is to now look at how we can now monetize and structure the museum to generate revenue.
Eugene, this is outside what we saw there. There's a body, certain body, Artifacts Rescue Association of Nigeria that was set up to rescue artifacts from this country.
Yes,
And they are a kind of members for the federal government.
yes.
The artifacts they recovered a long time ago until what is the commission doing about it? Because you talked about recovery and payment.
Yes, so I think that with that, I would rather we had a more holistic discussion about it because, for example, the DFA would need to be involved. That's the Director of Finance and Administration. The Director of Museums would need to be involved. So it's not something that I'm at liberty to just discuss, especially with the press. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time. And
Sorry, I have one question.
Okay.
But you've answered most of the questions I was going to ask.
they've answered or asked.
They've asked, sorry.
Oh,
most
okay.
of the questions. So concerning what we just saw today, is there an immediate plan given that it's supposed to be an urgent answer to the Egbo Bassey building?
Yes, I believe the doctor and his team are moving to site tomorrow. So the purpose of this meeting was like an official handover and a project kickoff. So yes, there's definitely an urgency to it. I'm sure you saw the building. So any minute or any serious rain or storm, the building could come.
Colonial history of Nigeria is one chapter. However dark it is one chapter that is very important, for us, also for the future generations. And prefabricated houses is one of the most significant, I would say, advancements in architectural history. And that house is a very good testament to prefabrication of modular houses during that period. Prefabrication of houses started in 1624 in the UK, in the then Great United Kingdom. Right? Then they started exporting these houses everywhere into their territories, right? To even the US, to Australia, to South Africa. So that was our own share of it. But this one, what is unique about this one is that it was privately built by a Nigerian who was a wealthy merchant at the time. He was a middleman between the whites, let me say, I wouldn't like to use the word colonialism, but I mean, it is what it is. And of course, the Efik people in the Wood Calabar. So he was a wealthy man, and then he decided to order this building, to bring this building for then £3,000, of that time's money, which he paid in palm oil. So this building stands today as a testament, and this is why it is important because all of these histories, so that our own children can see, what happened in the past, when we're talking about colonial history, when we're talking about palm oil trade, when we're talking about slave trade, these are one of the relics, the material relics that testifies to that those period.
The sponsor of this project, that was being committed to. At this phase, I know there are two phases to it.
Unfortunately, for security reasons, I can't share how much is being committed. Is that your question?
Yeah.
For security reasons.
Then secondly, maybe lastly from my side, how do you reconcile the need to revise this museum and the near absence of history in our school as a subject?
That's a very important question. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position of power to do anything about this. But I think what is most important is that we currently have an awareness on why history should return back into our curriculum. You know, especially teaching children, pupils about this kind of important heritage. You know, now if we're able to also revive this video, which is the link, which is your question. You know, one of our aims is to be able to take university students there, you know, on excursion, for them to get to see this building, learn about the history of that particular region of Nigeria at the time. So this is why we decided that it will be a library on the one hand, which is going to contribute. It's going to have educational contribution. And on the other hand, of course, it's going to be a museum where they get to see the material evidences of everything that is being taught on paper in our history. So this is why I think it serves, adaptively reusing that building for those two reasons serves a very, very perfect purpose, which complements each other. On the one hand, you see the material evidence through the museum, you see the material artifacts, then you go upstairs and you're able to see, you know, written histories in the library. Not only limited to that building, because that building is only one of the many, that were brought in during that period. Unfortunately, I can categorically say almost 80% of them have disappeared. They've been neglected, they have deteriorated. So this is one of the long-standing examples, especially residential examples. The few ones that are still standing are the old consulate, for example, and the old residency, which is now a national museum. So the fact that that one is a national museum is being used and is currently in a very good, I must say, good state of conservation. But the ones that those old middlemen built, private houses, a lot of them had completely disappeared.
Okay,
But this one, as long as we have it, is still at least. Yes.
I have wanted asking if why particularizing in this Egbo house? Because we had the first building used by the first Governor General of Nigeria, in Zungeru, is still standing there.
Where? Now?
In Zungeru.
Zungeru, yeah.
Is in Niger State. And also the house used by Mrs. Lesser in Calabar in her time is also there. Why did you particularize on this Egbo?
That's a very, very good question, sir. I must tell you. I think currently we have 66 national monuments. 65. We have 65 national monuments. And to conserve this building, we can only take it one step at a time. Right? So the first step in this direction is starting with Egbo Bassey House. We hope to be able now to expand this to the rest of the amalgamation house, the Zungeru house, and of course the Maurice Lesser house. I'm not so sure Maurice Lesser is a national monument. I don't think it is.
It should be among the proposed.
It's among the proposed. It's currently not a national monument. But it's among the 212 proposed national monuments. So our hope is if we are able to foster a good relationship with the founder, with the Henkel, we hope to be able to extend this now to other. Several of our monuments require this kind of attention. So it's not like we are saying, okay, this is the only one, then we are done. We really hope to be able to maintain this good relationship with the founder, right? This bilateral relationship of the private sector, NGO, together also with the commission, to also extend now to diverse other buildings that we have, national monuments that we have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Very, very grateful. Very grateful. Obafemi is the name.
Okay.